Hello, welcome to another episode of the UEFA Dynasty podcast. I'm your host, Erik of VFL Wolfsburg, and with me I have my regular crew of co-hosts. First, to introduce Fred of Hercules. Fred, how are you doing tonight?
Doing pretty good. Got myself a Founders Centennial IPA, and I'm just enjoying myself.
Yeah, you could say you enjoy yourself a lot, can't you, Fred?
As often as possible. If I enjoyed myself anymore, I would go blind.
Oh, boy. Well, just to switch topics real quick, I also have Mike of Udinese. Mike, how are you doing tonight?
I'm looking forward to enjoying myself with Fred this weekend. I'm going to be down in the DC area, so we're going to drink a lot and make some terrible trades. So if you're looking to take advantage of my hospitality, please by all means do so between, say, 2 o'clock on Friday to about noon on Sunday. I will not be sober.
Okay, well, before this gets too flirtatious, I'm going to move on to our last co-host, who is what people call their favorite UEFA Dynasty commissioner, Matt Waite of Tottenham Hotspur. Matt, how you doing tonight?
Doing great. Thank you for that introduction. Second straight pod for me. Did you notice an uptick in ratings after last week, or how'd that look on your end?
Yeah, we were up 100%, and I can't tell if it was because of the extra guest or if it was because I actually got it uploaded to some of the services.
I figured it was me, so cool. Good.
How are we
Definitely doesn't
doing
matter
with
sex appeal.
19 to 24 demographic?
The heartthrobs on the pod.
Absolutely.
It's all ladies, too. Our lady demographic has gone up 100% from 0, which is still 0. But anyway, before we get lost in the statistics here, it brings me to a good point that we do have the podcast on every service that I know of. That's YouTube, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you use something else, let me know and I can put it up there. But as far as I'm aware, I got every podcast provider that people use. So subscribe. That way you don't even have to worry about it. It'll just pop up. You can listen to it. We're going to try to keep them to an hour, so it shouldn't be too long. And we appreciate you listening. We're going to keep doing them while you guys are listening. So this is great. I'm loving it. Just a couple more league things to run down here. We're in the 20th round. There are very little relevant players. You're lucky if these guys will make their team's rosters. So let's pre-draft, trade early, do everything we can to speed this up because it's a drag. No one looks forward to drafting anymore. It's kind of a chore at this point. So
I like drafting these players.
Trade your picks to Mike. He'll give you way too much value. Apparently, there you go. But
I won't give you too much value, but I'll give you my players for picks and then take back these guys.
Okay. Well, you know what? Some people do appreciate these rounds. I shouldn't talk so much shit about it, but I'm still going to talk shit because I'm going to drop these guys after week 1 anyway.
You're dropping these guys after week whatever. Fred, didn't you draft Tyreek Hill in this range a couple years ago?
It was, if you want me to look, I will, but it had to have been right around 18th, 20th round when he was
I think it was even later than that.
It could have been. I'll look it up. I have nothing better to do.
Okay, well, so while you're looking that up, one last thing I wanted to talk about before we actually got into the podcast was that once this startup draft ends, our youth squad startup will begin. Just to be clear, it's no trading, so everyone's going to make one pick. We're going to do it on Google Sheets. Matt and I are going to be the ones editing it, so you just let one of us know who your pick is. We'll alert the next person. We'll go from there. There's no trading, so it's really just knowing which guys you want. We suggest doing your research early so that it's not a painstakingly long pick, but it's going to be recruiting class of 2019 or any player younger than that. So if they were recruited this year, you're allowed to draft them. If they were redshirted last year by a school, they wouldn't be because they would be recruiting class of 2018. Anyone younger, you just have to specify either what school or what area they're from, so there's no mistake on who you're taking, and it's fair game. It doesn't have to be a football player. It could be a basketball player. It could be whoever you want. So we look forward to that. Once we get those assets loaded into MFL is when you'll actually be able to start trading them. So we appreciate your patience on all this. Oh, and one last thing, now that I think about it, we have our graphics guy working on these graphics. They should be done soon, we hope. So the site's going to be looking a lot better too. So a lot of things to look forward to. Sorry for rambling a bit, but we had to get through it. And let's get you to the content. And the content starts with some hot takes, and it comes from Fred and Mike, who did some research on our favorite owner in the league, and that's Granada. So Fred, why don't you start us off?
Basically, I was just trying to find a way to destroy everything that he has done, because he makes our life such a living hell on a daily basis. I wanted to go through and point out all the mistakes that he made and the horrible trades and draft picks, but I think Mike is going to tell me that may not have actually been the case. I put together a list of all the trades that Chase made and sent them along so that we could, weed out all of the players and picks that cancel each other out. Somebody he picked up and then traded away again. So just to, start with what he had and what he ended up with, and see where it works out.
Right, and I, as someone who loves Granada, I cannot wait to hear this.
Wow, you guys are really selling this. Would anyone else like to shit on Granada before we get this going?
He's a great guy.
See, this is why I love you, Matt, because you take care of the people in the league. You actually care about the people in the league. This is why you're the commissioner that everyone loves.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Can we get that made up into a hat? The commissioner that everyone loves.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd pay for it. Get that graphics guy on that too, Erik.
Yeah, on
it. Right. So, like Fred said, I've taken the consolidation of everything that Granada did and tried to, like I said, take that into what the net is player to player of the deals thus far. And then upon request, I've also taken a look at the first 15 rounds of if you just kind of stuck and picked what he would have gotten. And so not to bury the lead, but I would say that because he traded, he's probably done better than he would have otherwise. But again, it's definitely up for debate in terms of whether the trades were good for his team or bad for his team if you look at what he gave up or what he got. So, again, not to go too crazy here, but you know what? I'll go position by position. So, in terms of what he gave up, in terms of position, he gave up Drew Brees and Ryan Fitzmagic for Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston. Definitely a win. Right? Everyone's going to agree with that?
No question.
In the running back position, gave up Saquon Barkley, Lamar Miller, and Elijah McGuire for Joe Mixon, Ingram, Raquel Armstead, Jamie Samuels, David Montgomery, and Justice Hill.
I don't see Samuels on his roster currently.
He may have moved him again. Let's see. I'm not seeing him on the traded. Oh, there he is. Okay. Unless he moved him twice. All right. If that's the case, well, Samuels is going to swing this one way or the other. Would you rather have Barkley, Lamar, and Elijah McGuire, or Joe Mixon, Mark Ingram, Armstead, David Montgomery, and Justice Hill?
Yeah, as much as I love Barkley, I think I'd rather have the Mixon, Montgomery, Ingram side.
Again, I would agree. Wide receiver, I think it's going to be another.
Hold on, before you continue, Mike. I think the real question with Mixon is that his value is kind of at an all-time high here. Predicting that he's going to break out into RB1, like definite RB1 instead of like that fringe where he was last year. And I don't really see the Bengals suddenly getting more effective than last year. So it's certainly not going to be easier on Mixon. I mean, obviously experience plays a role into everything, but because of that uncertainty with the rookies that I'm not in love with, I mean, they are good rookies. I think I would still take the Barkley side.
I'm going to go ahead and say that I disagree. The reason I say that is because I've been actually making offers for Mixon or other guys in a couple of my other leagues. And one of the things I found is outside of the top 4, the next 12, you could legitimately make a case for any of them. Again, you could make a case for Todd Gurley to be 5. You'd also make a case for Todd Gurley to be, holy shit, his knee, I can't trust this guy. You could make a case for, okay, Joe Mixon's 5. Or, hey, what's changed in Cincinnati to make Joe Mixon actually matter in the top 5 instead of something else? So legitimately, he's in that mesh of, 12 guys who 6 of them are going to be RB1s, but the other ones just aren't. So because of that, you can't really, step away from him right now.
Well, I think in a 16-team league, they're all kind of RB1s. They're just, some of them are much more RB1-ish than.
Did you do math right there? 4 plus 12 equals 16. I'm proud of you. Anyways, from a receiver perspective, he gave up Sanu, Traquan Smith, Dante Pettis, Goodwin, Watson, and Marvin Jones. Got back Willie Snead, MVS, Dante Moncrief, Alshon Jeffrey, Preston Williams, and Corey Davis.
I also see Diggs on his roster. I don't know what
I thought he moved Diggs both sides.
He may have done multiple Diggs trades, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I'm seeing a Diggs for Diggs, Ingram, and Sanu for Rodgers, and I'm also seeing a Russ, Diggs, OJ Howard, Rivers, Penny, and Daniel Jones for in that Barkley deal.
So the moral of the story is it appears that he has broken down studs and gotten significant returns for them during the draft. Is
Right.
that basically what we're seeing here?
Yes, the only difference. So again, basically the way to balance this is obviously the quarterbacks he got are much better than the quarterbacks he gave. The tight ends he gave are much better than the tight ends he got. So he gave Ertz and Ingram for Cameron Brate, Gronk, and Jared Cook, as well as giving up all of his picks for next year. So again, you could kind of go this for his running backs and receivers. You could say big win on the quarterback side. You could say big loss on the tight end side, and he has no picks for next year. So I don't know what to make of this.
Yeah, and one thing that's super interesting from a strategy standpoint, and I think it goes to show you how often Granada trades and how willing he is to trade, is that early in the startup, his idea is, let me trade up for those studs. I want to give up my future assets. I want to give up later picks to move up and get my guys, to then get those guys and then trade them away down for startup picks that he pretty much gave to go up. And I mean, and they're different ranges and I'm sure he attacked it the way he wanted, but there wasn't a clear strategy from the go. Go get some studs, sell them. He's really looking for the players he likes, like someone he values more than another owner, and he's probably one of the most active owners to do it. He's always reaching out to everybody.
Yeah, when there's a guy that he covets, he will be tenacious to get that guy. And I see, those types of players on his roster that look like the kind of guys that he has in other leagues or that he's gone after before. So the only thing I will really critique him for here is he consolidated. He moved up. He got players. He got picks. He was able to keep getting. Keep trading into like the third copy of a player at relatively cheap prices, and try to get the guy he wanted or get the last copy of a guy that was on his list. I have a hard time putting together his 8-man roster. So I see Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, Mark Ingram, Joe Mixon, Stephon Diggs, Jared Cook. For all the trading that he did to get earlier picks, who are his last 2 starters? David Montgomery, Corey Davis, Alshon Jeffrey, Moncrief, MVS. Everyone else is a real question mark. And 2 of those guys have to be starting for him on an every week basis. I'm sure he knows, or he thinks he has guys pegged for who's going to be his starters, but the rest of the world has real questions about Alshon Jeffrey and Corey Davis and even Justice Hill or David Montgomery. He'll probably be Montgomery is probably the closest to a sure thing of anybody here.
No, I mean, I'm sorry. I think you might be overthinking this. You get his 2 quarterbacks. You've got Mixon, and I could see having conversations about who his second running back is going to be. It's Diggs, and I could see conversations about his second receiver, and then Cook. So you have conversations around 3 guys. And if your conversations for who you're going to start for your last 3 are in terms of David Montgomery, Corey Davis, Alshon Jeffrey, Dante Moncrief, Cortland Sutton, and we'll go ahead and call it Mike Gesicki here because we're tight end premium. There are much worse conversations to be having. Plus, he's also got Adam Humphries is kind of a shot in the dark that I also took for Tennessee just played up to have him play the slot, and whether we like him or not, he did just dominate for Tampa Bay the last couple of years. As well as MVS. Someone's going to win that wide receiver 2 role in Green Bay, and very, very well could be him. So I think saying, okay, who's his last couple starters going to be? Yes, he doesn't have a studly top 8, but it's not exactly like he's going to be fishing in the dark for a couple of starters here. He's going to be fine.
Well, Matt, we'll let you get the final thoughts here on Granada's roster strategy and the trades during the startup. Well, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm somewhere in between both Mike and Fred here. I think when the dust settles, he's got a decent team here. He's definitely got options to play with for flex positions, filling out the little back end of his roster and stuff. But for a team that gave up basically all his futures, I don't think it's a top end team for sure.
I will just one more thing from my side. Key term in what was just said. When the dust settles, the dust is not done settling with this team. We've all played in enough leagues with Chase that he's never going to stop trading, and we're going to have no idea what the starting roster for his season next year is going to look like for another month because it could look entirely different. Diggs and Mixon could be on different teams. God knows what his quarterbacks could look like, and he could end up with Ertz and Ingram back on his team at tight end by then. So we're seeing this in a point in time now, but things could change rather rapidly, especially considering it's Chase.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if there's ever been a guy who follows the news and overreacts to it, it's Chase.
Well, I think that's a good stopping point. Clearly, some mixed reviews here. As the owner of his future first-round pick, I certainly hope they lean more towards negative. I could use an earlier first, but I think that's some good analysis there on our buddy Chase, who everyone loves. Everyone wants to be in a league with him. Can't say that more. But moving on to our first team that we're going to review, it's going to be Liverpool's team. I think his name is Kevin or Mr. Football, whatever you want to call him. He's asked for us to look at his team. When I look at this team, I see a running back heavy team. He traded away most of his future round picks. He has a 4th left. But in return, he's able to collect a very solid, one of the best running back crews with Le'Veon Bell, David Johnson, Philip Lindsay leading that crew. At receiver, it's not young, but it's definitely start worthy. He's got Antonio Brown, one of the best receivers of this decade. He's got Larry Fitzgerald and T.Y. Hilton in receivers 2 and 3 who are going to put up plenty of points. And he's got quarterbacks, Drew Brees, a Hall of Famer, and Derek Carr, who's not the best option, but he's certainly someone he could start on a week-to-week basis. So it's looking like a strong roster from my standpoint. What do you guys think?
I'll jump in first. So when I look at this roster, I see what I was looking for in Granato's roster. For all the moves that he had made, and I don't know, the breakdown of what everything Liverpool did, but just going down the list, I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 players that I want to be in my starting lineup, and that's without my tight end. You say what you want about Derek Carr, but he's a viable superflex player for this league. He's got Breeze, Carr, Le'Veon, David Johnson, Antonio Brown, Hilton, Fitzgerald. What more do you want to start with? And then he adds Philip Lindsay and Witten or Higbee or whoever comes out of that group. He's got not a ton of depth, but he does have guys like Shady and Adrian Peterson who can fill in and have multiple week runs on their own and be very solid starters.
Yeah, I happen to agree with you. Matt, you have any thoughts on this roster?
Because he's in my division, I took a look at this team, I feel like a couple weeks ago, and didn't really like exactly where he was going with it. Looking at it now, more complete, definite team here to worry about for me in the Premier League. As mentioned, he's got a ton of running back options to choose from. A little thin at wide receiver. I think he's an injury away at wide receiver to one of those top 3 guys from really.
But he only has to start one.
Only has to start one. Yeah, you're absolutely right. But his backups are crapshoots. Tight end is sketchy too. But like you said, he's gonna be starting 4 running backs a week easy. So and probably got a little boost with the Geis injury news too with Adrian Peterson. He probably gets a solid season out of him as well. So I like what he did there.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know. I don't think you're giving. He doesn't have depth at receiver, but he's got 3 solid options where one's a receiver 1 every week, and the other 2 are fringe receiver 1/receiver 2s, and they're not even the strength of this roster. So when you put it together, dynasty wise, you might not love the value long term, but this year I think it's scary.
I'm gonna zig. I think that Justin has a very good asset in this first round pick. I think the 2 quarterbacks are going to give him good value. I think he's got a lot of risk in his running back core, as well as his receiving core, and no tight end. So I think this is one of those teams that looks pretty great on paper, but then when you actually start putting the magnifying glass to it, you say, do I really like this? Like, let's be honest. Le'Veon hasn't played in a year. Let's, all cross the fingers and hope he's going to be fine. David Johnson had a terrible year last year, and we're going to take a college coach who got fired and say this guy's going to save everything. Philip Lindsay may not be the starter in Denver. He may end up being in a timeshare. Shady McCoy, same kind of situation. Nobody knows what the hell's happening in Buffalo. Adrian Peterson, yes, the guy's injury hurts, but that's just for the start of training camp. Who knows whether he's still going to have a hold on that job by the beginning of the year. So again, it's you can legitimately you can poke a hole pretty easily in every single one of his players. And the fact that he doesn't have any of his picks or any ammunition really outside of trading the starter to add a real tight end, like. What are we talking about here? This is a mid-table team. I wish it was more, but this is a mid-table team.
So you don't think? I mean, roster as built, you're critiquing, but making trades and consolidating or moving off of a player to get somebody who might be running hot, that kind of thing. He's got ammunition to modify his team on the fly with the strength and depth that he has at running back. I mean, because people are always going to be looking for somebody who's a viable starting running back.
Right, but when's the last time in any of your leagues you've seen someone pay up for David Johnson or Le'Veon Bell?
In mid-season, you're saying? I mean,
No. This offseason. When's the last time you've seen someone pay up this offseason for Le'Veon Bell or David Johnson? Or Antonio Brown?
Fair point. I mean, I've been trying to
or T.Y. Hilton
in one league, but it's a special case. I was able to move off of Le'Veon and a different league, and you take what you get if that's what you're trying to do with him. I mean, he didn't take Le'Veon or David Johnson based on their 2018 numbers. He was trying to foresee what they're going to do this year. And sell them, he would have to sell them on their 2018 numbers, which means he's not going to.
Yeah, and I'm going to chime in saying I think it's a valid point to bring up that there's no sure options. I mean, I would say Larry Fitzgerald and T.Y. Hilton are pretty consistent. T.Y. I guess battles injury sometimes, but on those assets that you mentioned, they're certainly players that aren't trending upwards, especially because of their 2018 performances or Le'Veon Bell not even playing. But still, when you put it all together, the talent's there. That's why I mean this is a solid 2-2 split on. Do we think this roster is strong enough to be at least a heavy contender? I think we can all agree it's a win now team based on the way he constructed it. But I think there was some good analysis on him. So let's go ahead and move on to our next team, and our next team is Borussia Mönchengladbach. Yes, that's how you say it. I follow the German league. It's a fun one to say. I love saying it. And this one is actually a real interesting team. I'm glad he wanted us to do it. His name is Blake, and he has Saquon Barkley and Alvin Kamara, if you can believe it or not. That's right. He has Saquon Barkley and Alvin Kamara. Last time I checked, those are two pretty good dynasty assets to have. He's also got Keenan Allen at receiver. Other than that, not too much depth there. At quarterback, he has Phillip Rivers and Jameis Winston, so nothing to really win him, a quarterback battle, but nothing to really lose it either. Two middle-of-the-road guys, in my opinion, fantasy-wise at least. He's got Darrell Henderson at running back, too, who seems to be trending up and down each day. At tight end, he has Dallas Goedert, looks like his number one. He traded away his rookie first-round pick. So really a studs and duds approach, the way I look at it, but you got to love those two running backs that you figure could win you any week, any given time.
I'll go. The studs and duds is exactly the phrase that I would have used here. Looking at his starting roster, I can only peg 5 guys who I want to be comfortable with on a weekly basis, as of today. After that, he's got to decide amongst like Darrell Henderson, Jalen Samuels, Robert Foster, DK Metcalf, and then one of his giant question marks at tight end with Gesicki, Goedert, and Waring. So I don't know if there's more trades in the future here to try and solidify that starting 8. But right now, this is a team that has built possibly too much at the top, at the expense of being able to fill out the rest of his starting roster, not even to mention depth.
You took the words right out of my mouth. I'm very excited for Erik in having this first round pick for next year, because this is what you're trying to say for Chase's team early on. I cannot find who the 8th starter is going to be on this team. You've got, obviously, Rivers and Winston. You've got Barkley and Kamara. You've got Keenan Allen. and then your last three literally aren't starters for their teams. So is it DK Metcalf because he's a rookie and, one rookie made over 800 yards last year? Is it Robert Foster, where no one knows exactly what's happening in Buffalo? Are you starting Gesicki or Goddard? It's the type of team that, it makes a lot of sense on paper because, hey, my first round pick is going to be the tight end that develops into a guy who produces for me next year. That's great. But your first round pick is still the 104 next year. So, it's a nice thing to own. So he's going to score enough points with his top five to be over 100 every week. But those last three aren't going to do him any favors. He's going to have a lot of wins that turn into draws because of it.
Yeah, I see this as a roster that's probably going to need to break somebody down or do something if he starts out on a hot streak. He gets a couple wins under his belt and decides that he's going to make that push and he's a win now team. He's going to have to do something to do it.
And we've all seen, especially in our Game of Thrones shared league between us four, we've seen the studs and duds approach work with House Bainport in that league. He probably had a little more depth, but he had more time to build it. The one thing that concerns me with this heavy stud dud in a deep league is that you're one injury away from only having one asset to trade. Say Saquon Barkley gets hurt and he's missing a lot of time. Alvin Kamara has a slow start. You're stuck. There's nothing you can do. You don't have your first round pick. You don't have any sellable assets where you can get good value for them. At that point, it's almost like just a lost season. So it's a risky team for sure if he can't move players, before the early weeks of the season. Matt, what do you think?
Well, you guys talked about the studs approach, and I think it really comes down to what's being termed as his duds, if you like him or not. I happen to really like some of these guys that could come on and surprise one injury away types. I'm not going to touch up too much on that wide receiver 3 and what's he going to do at tight end, because you guys are absolutely right. Those are holes, but guys like Chase Edmonds and Dexter Williams and Jalen Samuels and even Jameis Winston, getting the full 16 out of him in that offense. I happen to like his studs, and I think he's close on those backup guys. I think after training camp and maybe some injuries, I think this could be a really solid team this year.
Okay, so Matt's zigging when everyone else is zagging. It's interesting. And so, do you think he needs to acquire more depth to get those late starters, or do you think his starters are just going to carry him?
Like Mike said, his studs can carry him a long ways. I think by the time the season rolls around, week 1, week 2, some of these backups that I personally like are going to emerge and help them out.
So, earlier Mike mentioned, how many points a team is going to get in a standard week, or maybe it was this team. How many he's going to put up even without solid finishing starters. Where are we with this league? I mean, this is a full PPR, 8 starters. What is your target for the number of points you're aiming for in a single week? Is about 110, 115 to be in that range where you want to be able to win a game, bearing in mind that we have that gray area with a draw where if you're putting up 100 points and your opponent is putting up 90 points, you're not winning the game.
Yeah, that's a solid point. I really haven't broke down the points, but you certainly want players who can basically, when you look at it at a week-to-week basis, if you have a team that's going to score 100 points every week, it may not be as good in this league as a team that scores 125 one week and 75 the next. And now with the studs, you can definitely do it, but I do think you need that depth to provide that high ceiling because, you look, say Saquon has 30 points and Alvin Kamara has 25 points. That's 55 to start. You're looking good. The quarterbacks get you another 30, so that's 85. Do you have enough to get 40 by your other 5 players every week? I mean, I don't I don't think you can do that consistently, and I think that's where you start to worry.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of teams that have posted their week 1 starting lineups yet, but for the ones that I see, the average total seems to be around 115, and there's some better, there's some worse. There's some teams that are just putting up bullshit lineups to try and make them as low as possible. But for the teams that are actually submitting their lineup, that looks to be the range that we're in here. Obviously based on whatever criteria these projections are based on. And right now, this team is listed at just under 117 points, which is below the road for what I'm seeing.
Okay, so again, another team with mixed reviews, and I think the one thing, besides a few teams that are rebuilding, we see this theme where there's a lot to be decided. There is nothing set. I don't think there's an early champion. I think if you ask all 4 of us, we'd pick 4 different teams. That's how wide open this contest is, especially in the competitive startup where we had a lot of teams buying players. So, yeah, I definitely look forward to seeing this roster, but let's move it on to our next roster, and that is Chris's team, Atletico Madrid, who's been asking for multiple weeks, seems to be getting a little upset, so we'll finally get him in here. Another team that is heavy running back early. Jeez, all the teams that we've been reviewing the past 3 episodes, running back heavy. Starting with Christian McCaffrey and Leonard Fournette at running back. He's got Matt Ryan and Jameis Winston, another Winston owner here. Matt Ryan is a solid QB1 option, I would say, and Winston a solid QB2 in this league. So definitely competitive at the QB position. At receiver, I'm seeing a lot of youth, not really any receiver ones to start. He's got Calvin Ridley at receiver and Chris Godwin that are sure players that we're excited to see. He's got Curtis Samuel, Anthony Miller, Christian Kirk, Deshaun Hamilton. So a lot of second round players that could make that next step. At tight end, he's got Greg Olsen and Josh Oliver. So he traded away all of his future picks except for his 3rd, and that's the roster he came up with. A little more youth mixed in with those stud running backs here. So another question mark, because I do like his quarterbacks a little more, but hurting at solid starting receiver options for a consistent basis. Why don't we start at the other? And Mike, you go ahead and take it away first.
Sure. Again, I'm looking at who has his future first here before I go too crazy one way or the other. But again, I would say that McCaffrey's the obvious thing that we're confident about here. I have his first for next year. Just taking a look at that. So it's Ryan and McCaffrey that we're confident about. Fournette and Winston are up in the air, and then he's basically hoping that he hits on 3 of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 receivers. So as long as you can, figure out that 3 of them are going to hit and 3 of them aren't going to hit, or 3 are going to take a little bit longer, he's going to be fine. But I, kind of to your point, I think it's going to be about 100 points to be in the draw conversation and 120 to be in the win conversation on a week-to-week basis. I don't see this team getting to 100 points on a regular basis.
Right.
I think McCaffrey gets 25. I think his quarterbacks get 50. And then it's a conversation of 50 is probably too much for the quarterbacks, probably more like 30 or 40. But then it's a matter of, can Greg Olsen, in probably his last year, if he even makes it the full year, and these receivers make it above 120. I don't see it. I think this is going to be a team with a lot of draws. I think it's going to be a mid to low table team, just based off the fact that I can't come up with more than 2 receivers on a regular basis for this team to really, to be carrying them.
Right. And so this team that traded away future round picks to acquire value doesn't necessarily think that he's pushing all in, because I think at some point you would have to not take one of those young receivers that you think might break out and draft a veteran that's going to put up consistent points that may not have that same value. So it's almost as if he liked the value in the trades, perhaps, and that's the way he went, because in a league like we've been saying where everyone's competing this year one, besides for a few teams, there's nothing that puts him over the edge. And, and a big cog for Chris is Leonard Fournette. Can he stay healthy, and can he be as productive as everyone wants him to be? And if he is, and he has two stud running backs, it's a different team for sure. But with that question mark, it certainly seems like he's not a team that's going to be in the Champions League this year. But we'll give it to you, Matt. What do you think?
Yeah, it's the McCaffrey show for sure. I think maybe overlooking Christian Kirk, Chris Godwin there as sophomore season kind of kickstart their careers. Actually, I think Godwin's a third-year player, but I think he's got something there at wide receiver. But yeah, you're right. There's just not a lot of star power on this team that's going to carry him very far.
So one of the interesting things that I see here is he was the first player to draft, or first owner to draft Leonard Fournette, passing up on George Kittle or Keenan Allen, Amari Cooper, Zach Ertz, Stephon Diggs, Antonio Brown kind of thing. So there was a conscious choice there that he is picking Fournette based on his potential and not necessarily based on his risks. And there's something to be said there. When Fournette has been on the field and playing, he's been at that level. I just don't think it's reasonable to assume he is going to stay at that level for the amount of time you need him to in order to be competitive through, season long. The other thing that I see here is, he drafted Greg Olsen, but he missed out on Ian Thomas. And that seemed like the obvious choice instead of a guy like Josh Oliver. And maybe he just missed out on him, couldn't swing a trade to get one of those copies. That would have shored up, his certainty at tight end performance. And now he's got a rookie who you can't count on, and a veteran that you can't count on, and another rookie that you can't count on. Assuming you can't count on them, for long stretches at a time.
Right. So yeah, certainly a team that we're not sure the direction, unless it's a value. The way I see it's a value team. He took the players that he thinks are going to gain value, and he's not necessarily looking to compete year one.
Well, he has to be, though, because he traded away his first, right?
I mean, you don't have to. I mean, if you trade your first round pick, but you gain enough value that it makes up for it, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Because if you think about it, you trade a first for a player, if that player turns into something better than what you would have took in the first, it's a clear win.
Yep.
But so that does it for our team reviews. It's kind of a short episode here. One thing I'd like to talk about before we go off, and I was looking at something on Twitter, and that is the anomaly that is Derrick Henry, who we saw struggle his rookie year when he got carries, who we saw at the beginning of this season did look like a shell of his college self, did not look like a guy that was ready to take that big step. I think it was like week 12 or week 13. Here comes the 200-yard, 250-yard to 2 to 3 touchdowns a game bulldozer that we all wanted to see, and he kept it up through the end of the season. They really didn't have any reason to, keep him fresh, so they let him run because it was the end of the year. But he certainly looked impressive. So I wanted to get your guys' takes on, is Derrick Henry he can't catch the ball. That's his problem for fantasy. But do you guys think he's going to be a relevant starter in this league?
Did you say an irrelevant starter?
A relevant star. Sorry, I might have misspoke.
He's the kind of guy that I think when I look at Derrick Henry and I look at Leonard Fournette, I see the same thing, and for different reasons. I want to believe in both of them, and they're both big and fast, and they do things that other runners cannot do, or just choose not to do. But at the same time, they both appear to be limited in their versatility, and they're also both buried on offenses that don't appear to be designed for the 2019 NFL.
Yeah, and it's puzzling. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand if it was perhaps a confidence issue where once he got going, he's like, here we go. Or if it's something that just happened with the defenses he was playing. But to me, the stat difference is too big to just mark it up as, he got lucky a few weeks. I think something changed. And I can't identify it, and that's what puzzles me. And I've read everything. I've looked at the tape. I can't figure it out. And I wanted to see if anybody else had any other takes. Matt?
He is probably a top 12 redraft running back, and he was drafted as the 21st running back in this format. So I think
in PPR, you think he's a top 12?
Yeah. I mean, not my personal rankings, just rankings you see around. He's a back end running back, one high in RB2 in like a redraft format right now. And he was taken as RB21 in our format. So I think there's some value where he went right off the bat there. Then you look at what they added in the draft. I think they brought over Roger Saffold from the Rams. So they've greatly improved their line. I think, yeah, absolutely. I don't think, I mean, he can't put up the numbers he did for the final month of the season for an entire season, but yeah, he's someone I'd want to get behind right now.
Yeah, I think he's going to be a top 10 running back this year. I think people talked about him as if he can't catch. I think he's one of those guys that hasn't been asked to catch. If you look at when he was in Alabama, they had TJ Yeldon, they had Kenyon Drake, guys who were better suited for it, but not necessarily because he couldn't do it. It's more, he wasn't asked to do it. Same kind of situation in Tennessee. Deion Lewis is obviously a better pass catching running back, but at the same time, he can still do this. I think he's going to end up with 30 catches and see himself in the, call it 300 yards and 2 passing touchdowns. So you add that to what you're expecting from his running total, and not necessarily a bad place to be. The real question is going to be how productive is the Tennessee offense. I can see an argument saying that based off of just his running volume, he's going to see 300 touches, and that's going to be more than what carries him to the top 10. I can see the argument of there's no way based off the timeshare that he sees anything more than 250, and that's why he's not a top 20 running back. But, if you're going to actually take a swing at it this year, he's the exact kind of guy that you can get, in that 4th, 5th round of a redraft draft to say, okay, this is my second running back, this is my flex running back, and this is the guy who's going to give me the top 10 weeks to be able to actually take a shot at this year.
Right, and the one thing that I was blown away by, in a fun little anecdote, my mom is in a redraft league with me, and she is a Derrick Henry owner. I think she owned him back-to-back years, actually. And so never starting him, had no problem. The 1 week he blew up, and in our format, he had over 50 points. And so my mom's telling me, hey, this week I think I'm going to start him. He went off. I was like, Mom, it was a one-time thing. He hasn't shown he can do this. I wouldn't necessarily start him. And she told me, she's like, I don't know. I think he's going to do it again. I'm going to start him. And boom, he goes off again. And I'm like biting my lip, like, God damn, I'm never going to hear the end of it from her. She'd do it. And so I think it's one of the craziest black and white things we see in the NFL, where someone has struggled so much and then all of a sudden, boom, out of nowhere, has been so productive. But I happen to agree with you guys on his NFL career-wise. I think he's going to be a top running back in this league with his rushing skills. I'm still a little bit worried about putting him in that running back 1. He's in my running back 2 spot right now in Dynasty and fantasy in general.
So believe in him because my mom said so.
Hey, she's a believer. She made one believer, that's for sure.
I like it. You know what? Everyone needs reasons to believe. That's as good of a reason to believe as any.
Right. So before we wrap things up, is there anything that anyone else wanted to bring up?
I was trying to check out draft picks that we've made since last time we were here. There were a couple interesting ones. Rob Gronkowski, of course, but I think we mentioned that last week.
Yes, we did.
Yeah. So there's the Preston Williams, ESB, Riley Ridley. Just guys that are flyer types that you hope something turns into, or you turn into something. I don't know if there's any players that you guys liked or got sniped on, at this point in the draft. I know
other than Deshaun Kaiser.
I was trying to get Jake Kumaro and had 2 picks in 4 total picks and didn't get him.
Why you taking the 13th?
I should have taken him.
Yeah, there is a guy I got sniped on, and it's funny because I came on here saying I just missed on Will Grier, and then I have Andy Dalton. I was trying to get his backup, and boom, just missed on Ryan Finley. So I think it's funny. I don't know if teams were looking like, oh wait, the owner. This late, I don't think people are looking like, oh, he might be looking for his own backup. But it's funny that they went both before my picks where I was gonna take them. So I got Kaiser instead, and I mean, come on, Chase says he's gonna be the next MVP, right? So hell yeah.
He didn't say the next MVP. He's going to be a MVP.
Exactly.
I'm not competing this year. I can be another year. That's fine.
I don't know who it was in chat that was. I mean, Finley was my guy too. Coming around the turn, like 7 picks to go, both Borussia teams took a copy of Finley, and I went, "What the fuck?" Do you remember during the draft, Erik? We were talking, and I was telling you that Our Lads, which is a well-respected draft site, had Finley as their number 3 quarterback in their rankings. So he's a guy that I've had my eye, because I can't scout quarterbacks. It's too in depth for me. I think everyone would agree on that. It's a tough thing to try to learn. But yeah, he went. He had all 3 copies, about 7 picks to go, and they all went right in front of me. I was furious about it. So because I think there is an opportunity there in Cincinnati. I don't think Dalton's necessarily locked that down long term. I think they're only adequate with him right now.
Right, yeah. I think owners got a steal on him. I should have drafted him earlier. I didn't even realize he was still there, I think, when I was drafting him. It's certainly an opportunity. I don't necessarily believe in the talent, but when the opportunity is there in a deep super flex league like this, it's certainly going to, if at worst, provide hype so you could sell at somewhat of a gain. And if you hold on to him, maybe even more. And I got one more fun anecdote before we go. This is like 3:30 in the morning on Saturday night. Arsenal's over my house after a full night of drinking, and he has his web browser up, and he's like, I want to make sure I have my pick. I'm going to pre-draft before, and he can't figure out why the player isn't going from one box to another. It's just a drop-down box. You can't see it when you first add it. He added 9 copies of Demaryius Thomas into his pre-draft. So he kept joking around. He's like, if I don't pick, I don't know what to do. I pre-drafted 13 guys, and then he made a list, and like 1 through 9 were Demaryius Thomas, which I thought was really funny. I mean, he was drunk off his ass, but.
So circling back to Ryan Finley real quick, I had a pick, 2 picks before the first copy of Ryan Finley went, and he was somebody that I wasn't necessarily targeting, but he was on my list of players that I was watching. And I had a pick, at it was 1845, and then I had another pick coming up, a little over 25 picks later. So not too far in the grand scheme of things with a 3-copy league. And I, to peel back the curtain a little bit, I don't necessarily like taking the first copy of a player unless I'm really sold on them. And none of the copies of Ryan Finley had been taken yet. So I was like, oh, I have plenty of time. I don't need to worry about him yet. Nobody's taken him. And then, bam, all three of them are gone.
That's the way it goes.
I'm not a Finley guy. Look, everyone likes to talk about the 2020 class. Oh my God, everyone's stockpiling picks, especially on this podcast. You got, Herbert. You've got Tua. You've got a number of quarterbacks who are going to be coming out of next year's class as top class guys. Great. Who are they going to start for? Miami. Yeah, Miami. Cincinnati's probably the next biggest landing spot. So you're going to take the guy who is an injury away in Cincinnati, but is going to get Wally Pipp next year. I don't see it.
So the other thing is that, the 2020 teams that will be looking for a quarterback are the same teams that were looking for a quarterback in 2019 when they realize that these guys aren't the answer. So you could still end up with the Giants and the Redskins and, teams that have much better talent or much better situations for a quarterback to step into. In addition to the teams that you're looking at right now that, they could be, a veteran retires, that unexpectedly or.
No, that's really.
Look what the Cardinals did.
That's an interesting point. So you're saying that, teams are going to go, okay, we drafted Jimmy Clausen last year. We're going to take Cam Newton this year. Or, hey, we took, Josh Rosen last year. We're going to take Kyler Murray this year.
I think there's a very
not the exception.
I think some organizations don't scout out further than 1 year, and they're only looking at the players that are going to be available in the following year's draft. So their scouts are focusing on those guys and not necessarily looking at the broader picture saying, oh, by the way, the 2020 class is looking much better or much deeper here, but we have a need right now.
And I think, although it can kill you as an NFL GM, and going back to the Cardinals, you take Rosen with an early pick. If you don't necessarily like what you see, and you see a rookie quarterback that you like better, clearly is something that even in a low QB class happened. So with the hype of the QB class of the 2020, I don't think it's out of the question if your gameplay was iffy at best, and that they're like, well, we could find value. Like they found value for Rosen. It wasn't great, but it was certainly a decision a GM will make in this era at least.
So again, that goes from 10 or 12 to 62. So a 50 pick drop to go from a quarterback this year to a quarterback, we're getting him someplace next year. Now, again, you're doing that 2 years in a row. What does that become? Again, I'd be interested to see if teams do that a couple years in a row because, like I said, I could come up with the Clausen example for it. I could come up with the Rosen example for it. And I can't really come up with another great example off the top of my head of, hey, we drafted our quarterback of the future in either day one or day two of the draft. And wait, after 1 year, we're all agreed this isn't our guy. We're going to go back to the well and spend either a day one or day two pick on this guy again.
You mean other than Rosen?
Rosen and Clausen. Like, those are the last two I can think of.
Well, how many years in a row did Cleveland draft a quarterback?
I mean, they drafted Kaiser. Who else was a day one or day two pick for Cleveland?
Johnny Manziel.
That's fair.
I mean, you see a lot of teams take quarterbacks, multiple quarterbacks. Like, how about Kirk Cousins and RG3 in the same draft? It's just the first round. Well, I think Mike's point is the first rounders are rare to go back to back in the first. But I mean,
Absolutely.
what? There's only 3 teams that won the first, right? We got Haskins, Jones, and Murray. And if Murray's the number one pick, I would highly doubt they move on again 2 years in a row. But could the Giants and Redskins do it? I can certainly see them taking another quarterback if it arises.
Look, if the Giants take a quarterback next year, means that they've got a new GM. Like there's no way that they take the heat they took for taking Jones at 8 and then turn around and say, "Oh, our bad. We're going to take another guy."
I disagree with you. I know it would be a horrible pick, but if Tua or if Herbert are there, or the Giants are picking, I would have to. I don't care who you picked when.
I mean, I think that's the point of taking one of the quarterbacks in 2019. If these teams were scouting 2020 in advance, saying, if you want, we think one of these guys might make it, but if he doesn't, we need to find out if he has it so that we can go back to the well and fix it next year.
But then if you go back to the well, you're basically saying this guy does not have it. And somebody else has to take him as a reclamation project. So you basically have just burned day one draft capital in the matter of doing so. So, again, you have to be at a certain point as a GM to be able to make that kind of move. And I don't think any of the guys who took day one quarterbacks have that kind of clout at the moment. I think all of them are kind of rebuilding their clout as new to their organizations.
Yeah, with the exception of the Redskins, that guy can't get fired, no matter what he does.
Please, can we fire him? Everyone wants to fire him.
He's related to George Allen. He's not going anywhere.
I know.
Okay, well, Chris in the chat who wanted to mention that the Cardinals handled it stupid, that they should have traded Rosen earlier before the Murray info leaked, so they could have got more value. I don't know if they were getting more than what they got for Rosen. That's the only thing I would disagree with. No one's given up a first for Rosen after the year he had last year.
No, but everyone in the league knew they were moving him, and everyone in the league knew they were taking Murray at 101. So he had no stand on to try and move him.
Before we wrap things up, Matt.
Devontae Parker, like literally everyone knows that he has them at a higher level than everyone else in the league. So you just wait.
Right, Matt. Do you have any thoughts on these QB situations before we wrap up here?
No, I'm tired.
Okay. Well, you know what, guys? I thank you for listening. I'm glad we got some football talking at the end because sometimes I feel like we don't talk about football in general enough. That was really fun. Thanks to my co-hosts for joining me. Matt, any closing remarks?
No, I'm tired.
Same. Consistent. I love it. How about you, Mike? I know you got something to say.
No, I'm loving Chris's engagement in the chat here because I agree with him on so many of these points. Again, I think that this is the fun part of Dynasty is to try and figure out where is the talent that overcomes the situation and where's the situation that overcomes the talent. And I think a lot of people kind of zigged that way with Rosen last year where they thought, hey, the talent's going to overcome the situation. And now it's a question of it's completely flipped. Can the talent overcome the situation in Miami to actually say, okay, he's going to be a starter. He's going to keep his job. He's going to be more than a 1 year. Let's test him out. It's worth it for a end of a second round pick here. So I'm really excited to see kind of how that kind of flies in the face of draft thoughts. So again, it's what makes Dynasty fun for people like us. So it's always a fun conversation to kind of go into this theory with you guys.
Yeah, and certainly I love talking draft capital and values with picks with you, Mike, because I don't think there's a person I would trust more when it comes to value of picks than you. So again, I appreciate all your insight. It really is expertise, if you will. But Fred, what do you think?
I don't know if we're going to get together again this week, to talk about some of the other teams. I think we're probably still well under half the teams that we've discussed in depth here. So there's definitely moves to be made. Mike, are you drinking a mule?
No, I'm drinking a whiskey in a copper glass. So, enjoying myself. I do have a UFO raspberry as a backup, though.
Oh, very good. I saw the copper mug and I was like, ooh, that looks exciting.
I've never had a mule.
Oh, they're lovely. But to stop interrupting myself, less than a week from now, training camp starts, and we will have actual and physical NFL news to be reacting to. In which case, get ready for all the horrible offers and comments from Chase.
Yeah, and all he's going to be interested in one of your guys because they got more reps than the other guy. So just follow the training reports, and you can follow them with Chase's trades even if you're not following. One last thing, we do plan on getting every team for the people that listen, for the people that are requesting. So make sure you let us know. Roma, sorry we didn't get to your team this week. We will get to them shortly. And one thing we want to do after that, and while training camp is rolling out, maybe what our format will be is a brief NFL news, or a brief league recap if there's any blockbuster trades. And then we want to get into either ranking or tiering the divisions themselves. So it won't just be team reviews. We can review teams where people aren't listening to the podcast or not active in the chat and compare your teams. So we plan on having some analysis for you guys to look at. And I think it's going to be real good. But anyway, I think that just about does it here. I'm going to go look up how to make a Moscow Mule and see if I have anything to put it in. Thank you guys for listening, and we will talk to you either later this week or next week.
До свидания.